Hi everyone, I'm glad to present our newest work entitled Neural Kernel Surface Reconstruction. In this work, we tackle the challenging problem of reconstructing surfaces from oriented point cloud. Our method is fast, scalable, robust. It uses neural kernel fields, and it reaches state-of-the-art performance. Given input points and normals, we first predict a sparse voxel hierarchy and a kernel field, and then we formulate a sparse linear system that tries to solve for minimizing the surface fitting error. Our method is tested on various different datasets. Apart from the high-ranking results, we also provide a kitchen sink model that is trained on a mixture of these datasets that is highly generalizable. To demonstrate the scalability of our method, we tested on the color simulator generated dataset. We can reconstruct a very large-scale scene within only seconds, and the trained model generalizes well to unseen data. Here's a piece of results by running our method on a very long racetrack. For the rest of the video, we highly recommend you to watch the explanatory video in our project website instead. Please scan the QR code or follow the link below to see more.
In this paper, our focus is on the challenging task of reconstructing surfaces from point clouds. More precisely, we aim to construct a dense output mesh from an input point cloud that may be large-scale, noisy, and incomplete. This task has numerous practical applications in various fields such as visualization, like novel view synthesis or geometric inspections, simulation, like collision detection or fluid simulation, as well as downstream tasks like digitalization and intrinsic decomposition. Surface reconstruction is a long-standing yet challenging problem that has been approached using various methods in previous works. One classical method called Poisson surface reconstruction formulates an energy problem that minimizes the surface fitting error and uses an accurate fitting solver to compute the underlying solution. However, this approach is not robust against noise. Recent advances in deep learning techniques have enabled the use of data-driven priors. For example, convolutional occupancy networks use a feed-forward network to directly infer implicit surface values. However, this method may produce over-smooth results that do not accurately represent the input points. To address these limitations, the neural kernel field method, published in last year's CVPR, combines both approaches by using networks to learn data-dependent kernels and employing the fitting solver to accurately interpolate the input points. In comparison to all previous approaches, we build upon the novel formulation of neural kernel field, or NKF, and make significant enhancements to it. Our proposed method enables us to reconstruct a much smoother geometry while also achieving significantly better accuracy. Now let's give a brief introduction to the kernel methods. Here, we represent the target surface that we want to reconstruct as an implicit function. This function is a summation of kernel basis functions as shown in the middle column. The kernel method aims to minimize the reproducing kernel Hilbert space or RKHS norm of the function, subject to the constraints of input point positions. This essentially involves solving a kernel-rich regression problem that gives the coefficients of the kernel basis via a single linear solve. As the inductive bias of the implicit function is controlled by the kernels, we make it data-dependent and learn the inductive bias from a large-scale training corpus using neural networks. Examples of the learned kernel basis, which reflect geometric priors, can be seen in the lower right corner of the slide. Our key contributions address both main problems of NKF. First, to improve scalability, instead of a dense kernel with support over the entire domain, we build sparse voxels and modulate the kernel basis functions with a Bézier mask function defined over the voxels, as shown here in the top right figure. We use the simplest form of data-dependent kernel defined by the dot product of the learned features at x and x prime, as shown in the k-theta equation. This dot product formulation allows for greater flexibility in the shape of the kernel basis function. Additionally, we build a hierarchy of these kernels, where different levels capture varying geometric details, as illustrated in the lower right figure. Second, to enhance noise robustness, in addition to the positional constraints, we introduce a novel gradient-based kernel formulation. This formulation requires the gradient of the implicit function to match the normal constraints predicted by neural networks. While the normal constraints allow for a smoother implicit function, surface details are incorporated into the system using the complementary positional information. This problem can be efficiently transformed into a single linear solve, and the left-hand side matrix is sparse due to the range-limited interaction between kernels. We employ a highly efficient preconditioned conjugate gradient solver to obtain the coefficient alpha in practice. The full pipeline goes as follows. Note that here, we only describe the inference time logic as the entire pipeline is fully differentiable and can be trained end-to-end. Taking the input points and their normals, we feed them into a sparse convolutional neural network, whose decoder branch contains a novel structure prediction branch that outputs adaptive sparse voxel grids. The sparse voxel grids contain multiple hierarchies of voxels with different sizes. For each voxel, we predict a latent feature that is used for kernel computation at an arbitrary position within the grid. To compute the point feature for kernel computation, we interpolate from the voxel centers. This allows us to effectively compute kernel-based implicit functions at arbitrary points within the grid. We then build a sparse linear system to minimize the surface fitting error according to the gradient-based kernel formulation, as described earlier, and solve it using a sparse solver. Taking the solved coefficient alpha, as well as the predicted kernel field, we evaluate the implicit function that defines the geometry. Finally, the triangular mesh could be extracted by running isosurfacing algorithm over the implicit field. Here are more qualitative results of the color dataset. In conclusion, our paper presents neural kernel surface reconstruction, an accurate and scalable surface reconstruction algorithm that uses a neural kernel field representation and achieves state-of-the-art quality and efficiency while demonstrating good generalization to unseen data. Future works include supporting more surface attributes such as materials, exploring more expressive kernel models to improve the power of representation for more detailed reconstruction and generalization, and reducing the memory footprint and adding out-of-core strategies for Earth-scale 3D reconstructions. Thanks for listening.